Hello, my name is Daniel Ross, and today on A Load of BS on Sport with myself and Dan Biggar, we welcome two times Lion captain, another Welsh rugby icon, I don't know who else I could possibly be thinking of, and one of the most quietly influential leaders in modern sport. It's Sam Warburton.
Didn't enjoy 80% of my career, I only enjoyed 20%. I went back home and I thought, oh my God, I'll never make that mistake again. The weight of pressure and burden off your shoulders didn't really I didn't watch rugby, I just focused very much on myself. That's like my one biggest bit of advice for like Lions captaincy.
Dan Biggar, good to see you again, mate. How are you?
Excellent, Daniel, actually, because my Mrs. Biggar, Alex, has returned from her little trip to the UK. So I am saved and realised how important to our whole family she is. So I am in a much better place this time than the last time we chatted. I think it was to Ed, wasn't it, last week? So a much better place.
That's
what about you?
I'm fine. You sort of pick the fish fingers off the walls. The house is back in order. Absence has definitely made the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, it has indeed. The house. I always think whenever my wife goes away for an hour or a day or a weekend, if I can give the kids back to her still breathing and the house still standing, I've done a good job. So we're just about there.
Basics, absolutely. Now, by the way, I mentioned just before we got on air, I had lunch with our old podcast friend Charlie Methven today, and we were reminiscing over more successful rugby teams than the present. But actually, he was very complimentary about you, and indeed today's guest, who I told him we were going to be chatting with. He said, that in your era, you were the guys captaining running the team yourself. We've touched on that, but you, Alan Wynne, Sam, Adam Jones, Tipperich, these were the guys essentially running the show, right?
Yeah, I think Charlie summed it up well, and I'm glad you've kept in touch with him because I think he's got a little place on the beach in Jamaica now, isn't he? So that could be a nice little spot for us.
Motivation, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, Daniel, and I think that's we had a culture and a dressing room who ran the team, and yes, we had clearly big coaches, big personalities, incredible coaches and staff, but we had a core group of senior players who took charge of the game plan, the dressing room, the standards, etc., and were able to implement that and achieve some success. And Sam was head of that. Sam was very good at was allowing others to have responsibility. In actual fact, Sam didn't want to be the guy speaking all the time or having the most say and dictating things. He was very, very happy to sit in the background and let others lead, but sort of taking a bit of an overall view of things, and rather than being that enforcer all the time.
Fantastic. Well, by the way, before we get right into the Sam Warburton conversation, can I just take a moment to remind and encourage all our listeners to subscribe, if you haven't done already, to A Load of BS on Sport on whichever podcast platform you listen to. That means the world to us. But on that note, let's bring in the man himself. It's Sam Warburton. Welcome to you, Sam Warburton. How are you and where do we find you?
Does that mean where am I right now?
Where are you physically? Where are you on Earth?
Oh, sorry, it's nothing as nice as Biggs. You're Toulon, I'm guessing, yeah.
I'm in Toulon, Wobbs, yeah.
What so? Because I'm looking like a bottle of milk compared to Biggs, and Biggs got lovely colour. So I'm in normal rainy Cardiff. It's actually been quite rainy recently,
yeah.
But I'm very good, thanks. How are you, Dan?
I'm very well. I'm feeling slightly anxious because we try and start with an easy question like how are you and where are you, and we're kind of. Well. We're stumbling. Well, I think we're going to be okay. Now, listen, we interviewed badminton Olympian Gail Ems last week, who you may have heard of. Now, she, like me, is a fellow Spurs fan like you.
I was just about to interject and say she's a Spurs fan, isn't she? I've heard that before.
Spurs fan. But not only that, I find out that your dog is called Ledley. For those who don't know, is named after a past Spurs team captain, Ledley King. Now, so I'm curious, whether any Cardiff rugby fans out there have any mutts running around their garden shouting Warburton, but, you never know.
You know what? It's funny story you say that, actually. Because, whenever I walk a dog, it's quite an unusual name, Ledley, isn't it? So people go, what's his name? I go, Ledley. They go, Leslie. I go, no, Ledley. They go, what's that for? I said, well, I name after football players. It's like an unwritten rule in the family. And they went, "Oh, who's that? Is that Joe Ledley? Because a Welsh
Oh
footballer."
yeah.
And which would be a worthy one, of course. So I'm like, "Oh, no, no, it's from Tottenham Hotspur." Then any Tottenham fan will go, "The only, the GOAT,
Ah,
Ledley King." So
Joe
it
Ledley.
was like my wife, I think your wife wears the pants in all the relationships. We can try and pretend otherwise. It was the only one time I did put my foot down and say the dog is being called Ledley. But there is. I did actually move on to my street. And there is a dog called Warby, actually,
Oh, there
genuine.
is.
So you say that about Mets, there is a dog called Warby who lives on the streets.
Is
That's
that
quite a
after
funny one.
you?
Yeah, I think so. Well,
Oh, it
unless they're
is.
really into physiotherapists and they named after my brother. But yeah, I think it's,
Yeah,
it's after myself. Yeah.
which would have been
I
quite
was,
niche.
yeah.
I was going to say, Wobbs, you must have got some image rights for that, did you?
Well, I only found out by accident because they were calling the one dog, and the owner wasn't calling the other dog at the time because he didn't know. I moved on the street. He obviously didn't want me to know the dog was named after myself, so he wasn't really calling the dog. And then I just met the wife the other day, and she said, "Oh yeah, we got a dog named after you called Warby," and I was like, "Oh," and it all made sense. So yeah, it's quite a funny one. You never expect those things to happen, so whenever you stumble across those, it's always quite funny.
Well, this is when you know you've really made it. But besides dogs, I mean, how are you spending your time right now? What's driving you day to day since you retired all of 7 years ago?
Crikey. It's funny because like I retired from rugby, but I'm by no means retired. It's what I say to the boys who finish now. I'm like, you might finish the game, but you don't leave the game. You're just finishing playing. You're not finishing rugby. Like rugby still continues in one form or another, whether it's through TV or through coaching. But right now, the sort of pillars of the things I do is the TV work is what people see me mostly do. But as you know, myself and Biggs will know, that's part-time work because I'll do one game on a weekend. I allocate one day in the week to prep for it. So that's like a 2 day a week commitment. So it's not like as big a commitment as it might look. And I kind of choose that as well because I want to be able to do other things. I do quite a lot of public sort of speaking, corporate speaking, and I sort of run my own fitness company, which I thought was going to be a bit of fun with my mate, and it's like turned into like a full-on thing, which I guess is a good thing. But and then I'm still juggling. I'm quite fortunate. I'm still sort of juggling a few of the brands that I worked with when I was a player. So yeah, put all those, and then 3 young kids. Like you chuck them in the mix. It's like, yeah, I got plenty going on. Thanks, it's busy, but I always say it's a nice busy.
Nice
I've sort
busy.
of when you first finish, you juggle a lot of balls. Had to go at coaching, got involved in some sort of administration type roles behind the scenes in rugby. Like you're just trying everything, and you just throw paint at the wall and just see what sticks. What you're passionate about, and as time goes on, you can gradually just refine what you're doing and do the things that you really enjoy. So they're not onerous then because you actually enjoy them. So that's a bit of a mixture of things that I'm doing. It's almost like 3 part-time roles, if that makes sense. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I love it, which is the main thing, which
That
I'm happy
that
with it, which is great.
is the main thing. But when people think of you as Sam Warburton, they think of captain, they think of a warrior. But what's something about you that most people wouldn't expect?
Um, well, I mean, I'll say this. Biggs will know this because he's obviously played for me for like including age group. Like Biggs has known me for God, played together like 12 years. But I'm I think people look at rugby captains, they presume they're all going to be quite vocal, domineering type characters. I'm very placid, quiet guy actually. Massively introverted. Um, so when I'm on stage speaking, I say these things. People think you're just saying it just for effect. I'm like, oh no, trust me. Like this is just a mode. I can flick a switch and I can do it. Similar with rugby. Like I cross the whitewash and yeah, I love competing, but any other time off the pitch, I was pretty chilled. So I'm unusually relaxed, massive dog lover. You talk about things I do, like I support the local dogs home, which I'm an ambassador for, helping them raise money for new kennels right now. Like they're sort of things which I love doing. So if I go to a party, I'm the guy who's on the floor rolling around with a dog, not really chatting to any of the humans. I'm just like interacting with dogs. So yeah, massive animal lover, really quietly introverted, big family man. So I always say this, like they did a documentary on me when I finished with my playing career with the BBC, and they want to do a doc. I'm like, look, you don't want to do a doc on me. Like, I'm really private. Spend time with my family, eat at the local curry house, walk a dog. Like that's my life. They're like, oh, brilliant. That's what we want to show. We want to show it's not all showbiz. So yeah, I've turned down all the showbizy things, whether it's I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Strictly Come Dancing, even things like Question Sport. I'm just like, nah, I'm all right, thanks. I sort of like to live under my little rock, and I like the simple life. So yeah, that's probably me in a nutshell.
Wobbs, I was going to say, question of sport, you'd be absolutely flying now post career. I've said this to you countless times, right? Everyone comes up to me, Dan, and they say, "Oh, how good is Sam Warburton on the telly? How knowledgeable is he?" I said, "Oh, he's brilliant, fair play, speaks brilliantly, knows the game inside out." I said, "But if you'd have asked Sam any question 12 years ago when he was a player, he wouldn't have known the answer to anything. He wouldn't have known who he's playing against, all the shapes, all the systems, and all of
Oh,
a sudden now he must have worked incredibly hard. How
it's, you
much
know
have
what?
you applied?" Yeah, but how much on a serious note, Sam, we have a bit of a laugh and a joke about that. But how much have you applied yourself in the last few years to the TV stuff?
Do you know what? You're dead right. This is God's honest truth. When we played Australia in the Lions tour in 2013, honestly, for the first test, I reckon I knew about 5 Australian players. That's no disrespect to
Oh,
Australia.
no.
It was just I was so focused on me and our team. I didn't care about what they did. I was very much like, we look after what we can do and we control what we can do, and everything else will look after itself. All the big players, but I didn't analyze plays. It's like some boys sit down the analysis and they watch the opposition endlessly. But I'm like, look, when I'm going through extreme fatigue and pain, I can't figure those things out in a split second, which foot they're going to step off. You've got to trust your intuition and your skill set. So, yeah, you're right. During my playing days, I never went on Question Sport because I thought if I asked for a home question, which is rugby, I get the answer wrong and it would come across really disrespectful. So that's what you're right. I didn't really I didn't watch rugby. I just focused very much on myself. But I was doing a game in TV when I retired, and I remember, like, when you retire, the first year you retire, anything you say is interesting. Anything you say right now is interesting because you're Dan Biggar, Linus Test 10, all these things. But after about a year, I suddenly went to this game and they asked me questions like about the team and the players, and I didn't know, so I just blagged it. I went back home and I thought, oh my God, I'll never make that mistake again. Like, I got to become the analyst now. I'm not just Sam, the interesting ex-retired pro, and anything you say has got value. Like, after a while, you need to become more than that. And then from that moment, that's when I mentioned, I dedicate at least a day's week for my prep. I'll then watch each team at least twice. Like, I'll watch a couple of games of each team, maybe like an hour's extended highlights, one full game. Then you go through some analysis PDFs, then jump on each one of their home websites, read all their news articles so you know injury status. Or like, that's just now just common practice. I just do it every game. So then when you turn up, yeah, you kind of sound like you know what you're on about, And when I chat to the lead commentators, because they're unbelievable, I chat to those. And I'm like, how would you retain all this information? This is like in the early days. They're like, oh, look, you learn for a game. And because they come and go, by the time you do the next game, you've almost forgotten what you just learned because it just stays in that short-term memory. Then it moves on to the next one. So yeah, now I sort of apply myself as we both did as a player. You just apply that into a new craft. So if you want to be good at something, you might be good at it for 1 or 2 years, but then it's short-lived if you don't practice. It's like we've seen good players come through into rugby. You think they don't have good habits off the field. You think they might ride this crest of a wave for 2 or 3 years, but they're not going to have longevity. You only have longevity in a career if you apply yourself to it. So yeah, I kind of make sure I apply those same principles as a player into the roles I'm doing now. Just be diligent, do your work, and be professional. And you'll get that back. Obviously, what you put in life is what you get back. So I make sure I apply those things into rugby now for sure. Which is why I sort of sound like I know what I'm on about.
You either sound like you know what you're doing or you're blagging it incredibly well, Wobbs. Fair play. Do you know what? Do you know what? Do you know what you touched on it? You touched on it there. Do you know what I say? In our group of players and the core group that we had in those successful years, people always ask, "Oh, what were they like? What were they like as players, etc." And I say, well, players, yeah, clearly they were excellent, world class players. But for me, it was why the amount of us or the amount of our guys lasted for so long wasn't because we were good players. It was because we had the right attitude. Like you said, we weren't prepared to just be flash in the pan players for 2 or 3 years and not put the work in, not do take shortcuts at every opportunity. And I think that's why we had the success we had. And I think we had characters in the team. And I think where I'm sort of going with this, with your captaincy style at the start, did you get a sense of that we had that group and it was relatively easy to just let boys do their own thing?
Sure, we had a good mix. And I remember when I was coming through and I said no to the captaincy to Warren Gatland originally, because I was looking at boys, I thought captaincy was about being more vocal. And of course, you have got to become a bit more vocal. Um, but I realized that I was like, now what I think Gats or the coaches liked about me was, and you know these things. I was like a super pro in the sense of, you know, diet, nutrition, no alcohol, love training. I thought I was respectful of the group, and you have to prioritize your performance and play well in the big games. Like, so I thought I can keep doing that. But things I found which were unnatural were like speaking and driving standards. That was probably something I found difficult. I drive standards in just my actions, but maybe not so much with words. But then that's where I found we had a group which complemented each other. So someone like yourself and Alan Wynne, who'd probably be the two most vocal players we had, and Gethin Jenkins at one time. That would then
Get in for slightly different reasons. Yeah,
it was still vocal, but maybe a bit
yeah,
different.
yeah.
But we had the cross section amongst, I think, a group of about 8 people of the different personality traits. Which then, if a young kid comes, one person can't cover everything. I find, and that's one thing I think maybe some leaders might try and do. They try and do everything, but I think actually getting like the right leadership team around. And for a young person who would step into that environment, they'd look across maybe 8 of the senior players, and across all those 8 players, they see everything that they need to be doing. And I think we probably had that cross section, but I think what was good with it was, and I think that this is one which I'm not sure if this is something you can give people, whether it's something you've got. And this is something I think that maybe this group that you're talking about had. It'd be interesting what you think. I think a lot of that ambition that came from those players individually was just innate and just comes from within.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to really succeed at something, yeah, you might need a parent or a teacher to push you a bit, but you've got to really freaking want it. Like, you've got to really want it. Like, I set my sights on certain accolades that I wanted to get, and I wasn't stopping until I got that. I'm sure I know you'd be the same. I know Al Wynn would be the same. Lee, Halfpenny, like uber, uber competitive people who have to achieve. Now that's all innate. And I sometimes think, and you know, say like John Davis, for example, like I sometimes think, and I heard him say this, that maybe this is true. Are we just lucky that that group kind of all came together coincidentally, or was there something that was nurtured into us from a young age in the academy? So I actually don't know the answer, but I kind of look back and I never take credit. I actually find it a bit embarrassing taking credit when people read out captaincy accolades. So I'm like, yeah, but to be a good captain, you need a bloody good leadership group around you. There's no one-man band who does captaincy. And I feel very fortunate I had that very good leadership group around me. I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, but what I think you were excellent at, Warbs, was you touched on it. You said like a lot of leaders don't like almost giving up a little bit of control and power and ego. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? In terms of they're almost for me, the better leaders I've played under are happy to just designate, player X is in charge of this part of the game, player Y is in charge of that part of the game. And I just think we had, like you said, we had a really good cross section. I think one of your biggest skills in that group though was the ability to let those boys have a voice. Do you know what I mean? To let myself have a voice, to let Alan Wynne have a voice, to let Foxy have a voice, Doc, etc. Because a lot of a lot of poor leaders wouldn't have the confidence in themselves to do that. So I suppose for me, and you mentioned it earlier, you sort of said you didn't feel that comfortable speaking in front of the group at the start. What were you trying to learn and improve, and who did you sort of seek counsel to improve on that?
Yeah, I guess it was much easier when I was 28 because I guess at 28 sounds young, but you are a senior player at 28. But at 22, it was very different. And it's interesting what you say about letting other people speak. That's like my one biggest bit of advice for like Lions captaincy. I remember in 2013, so I was like 24 at this point, and Brian O'Driscoll come up to me before the second test. He said, "Oh, Sam, like, I think you need to speak to the boys in this meeting about," and he said something, and it would have been like a really good message. I said, "That's got to come from you." I was like, in my head, I was like, you're Brian O'Driscoll, fourth tour. Um, I'm on my first tour, 24 years old. I think that's powerful coming from yourself. I think you should say it. And it wasn't me copping out. I was just like, it has more weight from you. And I've always sort of been down the mantra when it comes to like communication, whether it's with the group or whether it's with like refereeing. I always have done the mantra, less is more, because when you do speak there and people be like, oh, hang on, what's he, he's got something. You're not just speaking for speaking's sake, because there's a captain just before me who used to do that a lot. And I walked over to we finished a session and he called everyone in. And one of the senior players went, here we go again. And I was like young at this point, but I remember thinking, I never want to be that guy. I never want people to think that when I have to say something. So you sort of learn what not to do. The biggest influence I had, Biggs, was I never modeled myself on a certain player. I always wanted just to like be my own person, and because I didn't want to be captain, that probably kind of helped me naturally delegate. Because I was like, yeah, no, I still want to focus on my performance. You're still gonna be selfish in a team sport and do what you got to do. It was Andy McCann, the sports psych. I'm not sure how much if you use him at all during your career, but I leaned on him a lot when I was young, big time, and I was very lucky to have him around. So, he does now himself. He does a lot of psychology, like coaching, leaderships, things like that. And I was just lucky that he was there to help me navigate my way through that. So we did like an exercise where I just had to pick the 4 traits that I wanted to demonstrate every day, which I thought would make me a good captain. So with Andy, I come up with these 4 things, and I just lived by it, and I still do it now to this day. Like I use those 4 things; they're like my 4 sort of leadership pillars, and he helped me design that, and he obviously influenced it because he knows the sort of things I should have been adding. So it was a mixture of what I felt I was naturally strong at and what I could do, and the things I had to improve as well. So yeah, Andy McCann would have been the biggest one, and that's probably like I think some people think it's a weakness looking for help. I think it's a sign of strength when you're like, look, I ain't good at this. You've got to be self-aware. I'm not very good at it. I need someone to help me do bits that I can't do. So I think actually being able to, if I said to you as a captain, Biggs, mate, for whatever it is, I need you to drive this for me. I need you. Like, I think you're going to get more buy-in than somebody who goes, oh, I'm going to try and do all this myself. Like if you actually go to some senior guys and go, look, would you mind replicating this message on this day or whatever? Like people go, yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. And then it doesn't make it look like you're trying to do it all by yourself, because you can't and nobody can. So I think by delegating and getting that buy-in from people, it really does help.
Sam, you mentioned those 4 pillars. Maybe unpack those a little bit for us that you work with Andy.
Yeah, no worries. They all begin with P by coincidence. So I remember Andy shot them to me. He said, "Right, I want you to come up with 2 that you're naturally good at, because you've got to be true to yourself ultimately when you lead. So you got to do things which is everyone always hear be authentic. Well, let's pick some things which you're naturally good at. So number 1, I said, I want to be the best pro. Always on time, dress code, nutrition, the way I recover, the way I sleep. I want to train the house down. The way I am as a role model in front of the press, be squeaky clean. I want to be the best pro. So if a young guy comes into the environment, they're like, oh, right. Oh, that's what it takes. Okay. So that's easy for me. Be the best. I want to be one of the best pros. So number 1 was professional. The second one I said positive, like call it naive, but it's easy to sap. The one thing it's easy to sap, and there was times I wanted to sap, but I always made sure I didn't, because I just didn't want to bring the group down. So I was always positive, whether it was believing I was going to win a game, believing I was going to try and be the best player or the best in my position. I was always very positive about if we play New Zealand, right? Like it's a dull question to ask someone like you or me, Biggs, but you're in a press conference and they go, "Do you think you can beat New Zealand?" And I'm like, "What?" Like, yeah. Well, I used to, in my head, I used to think, that's why I'm sat on this side of the table and you're not. Because if you don't believe it, you're dead in the water. Like, are they better than us? Yeah, of course they are. When we played them, they were back-to-back world champs. I'm not saying we're better, but can we beat them? Damn right we can beat them. What are you on about? Like, I was just a very positive person. I always thought we could win. I always believed Wales was going to do well. I always believed I was going to do well personally. I just wanted to be like that. So, be best professional, be positive, because those traits will just naturally infiltrate the guys around you. The one Andy helped me with, because he recognizes, he said people. I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "Because you're so quiet, you need to be able to develop relationships with everybody in the group. Don't have to be everyone's best mate, but coaches, senior players, younger players need to be able to find you approachable. So if they've got something good or something bad or an issue they need to speak to you about, they can speak to you about it, because you need to be a source of information from all directions. I thought, oh, okay. So all I did was just make a small effort just to get to know people better. There's people I would have known anyway, like who coming through the age group system, like yourself, but boys who might be 10 years my senior or coaches. It doesn't mean like if I might just go and sit on a different dinner table than normal. Rather than, you don't have to host the table and have the big chat, but the guy next to you just eavesdrop and jump in on a bit of conversation, or you walk over to the training pitch with someone different, just have a quick 5-minute chat. Over time, the group then goes, oh, I can trust Sam and I can speak to Sam. So I had to develop my relationships with people. And then the other one was, you'll notice because we did this, was the leadership group and having the right people around you. So remember, like Thumper, our team manager called Thumper. He was like, Sam, we need this, we need this, we need this. And this is kind of when committees come in big, do you remember? And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be running around doing laundry and fines and all these things. I was like, he would be good at it, and then he would be good at that. And he went, all right, we'll do committees then. I was like, what's that? He said, well, just make committees where you chuck the boys in them. And you remember then that we had boys who went on committees. And I don't know if Biggs has said this on the podcast, Dan, but we put Dan in when he was a young kid on laundry, and he's done the job so well. He did it for about a decade. It's normally a job for the rookie, but Biggs
14 years, Warb, just so we're clear. I'm not letting anybody, whatever my achievement on the field is, that's my greatest achievement off there.
I love it.
I love it. Hashtag stay humble. Because if a young guy comes in, they see our number 10 who's played test match for the Lions is doing laundry. If he's not big enough to do it, then no one else is too big to do it. So I love that. Yeah. So yeah, you sort of delegate. And then we had that leadership group, Biggs, on a Monday. We used to meet every Monday morning. It might be 5 minutes that meeting. It might be half an hour. We'd quickly review the week just gone by. We quickly preview the week going forward, maybe chip in on some drills we think will be important in that week, or where we want to train, all these types of things. And that group shapes the week that moves ahead. So I always say there is probably 3 or 4 lads who've had as much influence, if not more influence than myself during that week, because we had those platforms where the boys could speak. So they were the things that we did on that people. So that's the third point: professional, positive, people, get to know them and get the right people around you. And the fourth one, which I come up with, was just like a non-negotiable. I just said, and I've sort of mentioned the word selfish already, but I just said performance. I think any leader, no matter what you are, whether you're in the business world, whether you're a player, whether you're a personal trainer, you got to walk the walk, and you need to show people the way, and you have to prioritize your performance, and you have to make sure that you get your performance right. Because the hardest thing as a captain is the moment you dip below, say, an 8 out of 10 game, my God, the guillotine comes down. Whether it's internally, whether it's externally, the pressure comes on massive. So you have to be still selfish and still diligent in your own personal preparation, because if you can't do your job, then ultimately then you're gone. As a leader, you're going to be gone. So it's that fourth one is non-negotiable, is your performance. Have to make sure you're always performing. And you recall, Biggs, there's times where I was playing with you and I would relinquish the captaincy, and I said, I don't want to be captain this weekend. I could have been captain for the last game of the championship in 2013. But yeah, I could get all the accolades, I could lift the trophy here, but these are conversations I'd had with Andy. I was like, no. I remember the coaches asked me, do I want to do it? So I was captain for the start of the campaign, got injured, got back in the team towards the end of the campaign. I said, no, I don't want to do it. It's not about me lifting the trophy. I'm the happiest in that trophy lift compared to any trophy lift I've done. Because I was like, I need to prioritize my performance. I need to make sure that I play a 10 out of 10 game. And captaincy is going to distract me right now, so I'm not going to do it. So I always did reference this compass with Andy personally, and then they've sort of helped shape. So that might explain some of the decisions I would have made when it's like, oh, Sam just said he's not doing the captaincy for this campaign. It's because I'm like, you know what, I'm playing slightly under form. I need to prioritize form right now, and I'm not going to be captain. So like that was my leadership compass. And even today, like when I walk into the things I'm doing today, I'm like, am I being a good pro? Am I positive? Have I got the right people around me? And do I treat people well? And am I making sure I'm doing my role well? Like that's kind of it. So I still use that compass, like even now to this day. So yeah, Andy McCann helped shape that, and I'm very lucky I had him as a young 22-year-old to try and sort of navigate this world. Because when you've got guys with 35 and 100 caps more than you, it's quite a scary place, you know. So it took me a few years to get used to it, but by the time I got to mid-20s, I probably felt quite comfortable.
I bet when you're so young, having that kind of framework is super helpful. It just gives you something to lean back on when there's so much doubt. around you, which is actually a question that I'd like to ask about that, because I think you've been quoted as saying that I trust myself because I doubt myself. If you did say that, I mean, what role does doubt play in effective leadership?
Yeah, a really good question I get now is like, do you get imposter syndrome? Um, and then I remember another occasion I was sat down as like, you know, one of the most experienced players at Cardiff. There was a young back row next to me. He was like, he was like getting our boots on pre-match. He was just in those quiet moments where you run out for warm up. And he went, "Do you still get nervous?" I remember saying, "Of course I do, because I care, because I really care about the performance and how I play." And having that like I even finish now. Sometimes people might read out your CV before you go on stage or something, and you go, "Jesus Christ, actually, no, I did all right." Because I actually finished with loads of like I stayed on for another year, I would have won another European trophy with Cardiff. I would have won the 19 Grand Slam with Biggs and the boys. Would have done another semi at a World Cup. I always wanted to get nominated for World Player of the Year. Wanted to win Six Nations Player of the Year. There were things I got close, but never did it. So I finished, and so I was like, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "I didn't do this. I didn't do this," and like you're always chasing. So I think having that sort of imposter syndrome and never thinking you're good enough is actually a good thing. Like that's what I've actually realized is a good thing. You're never satisfied, and I don't think anybody who's played top level finishes and goes, "Yeah, I'm really satisfied." I don't know, like I'm happy, but could I have done more? Like, yeah, I kind of wish I did a little bit more. If I'm being honest, I wish I did more. But I
I
think
think in
that's
any walk, yeah, go ahead. No, I, I was going to say in any walk of life, I think a level of imposter syndrome is healthy, whether it's in sport or business. I think really the best people have a little bit of it because you care so much, you want it so much, and I think a bit of adrenaline in anything that you do kind of drives performance. So I mean, all the great people we've talked on this pod, I think to greater degrees, always have a bit of imposter syndrome. They're always nervous and never complacent. But interestingly, you also said, I believe, that despite all these great achievements and everything that you just talked about, that you didn't enjoy 80% of your career. I don't know whether that's a quotation which just sort of keeps coming back to you, and maybe it's sort of misinterpreted, but it is interesting because, you know, despite the fact that you have to go through the reps, it's hard grind and it's repetitious, and sometimes you don't want to get out of bed to do it. Nevertheless, you know, you do talked about the scrutiny, the injuries, time away from family, but you know, I mean, what kept you going on the basis that, you know, 20% of it was great?
no, I still agree. I still stand by that. I didn't enjoy 80% of my career. I only enjoyed 20%. Now, don't get me wrong, the 20% outweighs the 80% tenfold. So when you win a championship or you play for the Lions or you win a cup with your club, like it's brilliant. But I mean, getting smashed in the cold pouring rain daily wasn't fun, I'll be honest. Being away from home wasn't fun. Having 8 operations wasn't fun. Being slagged off in the press wasn't fun. Having fans abusing you isn't fun. Like it's not a lot of it's not very fun. So when people say to like me and Biggs, "I do you want your kids to do it?" I'm like, yeah, if they really want to, but they're gonna have to really want to do it because there's a lot of hurdles there which they might fall over till they get to that point. But it's always the carrot though, isn't it? Which is dangling, which is what keeps you going. So for me, it was always like, yeah, I wanted to play for Wales and Cardiff. I was always going to be a one club man, but I was like, I have to be a test player for the Lions. I have to be testing. And then in 2013, because I didn't play the last test, weirdly, rather than enjoy the celebrations, I just thought I have to get to New Zealand 2017 and I have to finish that series as a starter. Like, might sound a bit selfish, but that was just what kept me going. So when it is tough, and there is times going bad, I'd be like, have I accomplished what I wanted to though with Wales and the Lions? It was like, no, I wanted Wales to get to a World Cup final. I wanted to be a Test series winner with the Lions. Until I did those things, I wasn't stopping. So I don't know where that like internal drive came from. And now I finished, I realized that a lot of the negative things I worried about, I didn't have to worry about because it's like minority of people. Like because you're in this bubble of playing rugby, you think 5 people's opinion might reflect the nation. But I remember when I was retiring, like really weird anecdote. I finished playing. I was like driving to a Wales game about 6 months after I finished. I was driving down the motorway and I was just looking at all the people left and right when they're just overtaking you. And I was like, and they're all doing mind their own business, going somewhere else. I remember thinking, most of the world don't give a toss about you. But you think it's that spotlight effect. You think everybody cares about you. No offense, they don't. And then like everyone's got their own problems. And I was just like, oh, why did I worry about all those things? And my granddad, before he passed away, I was very close with him. and he used to talk to me during my career, and I used to stress about certain things. And I remember he said, mate, he's like, you worry about the wrong things in life. I was like, what do you mean? He said, when you're 85 and you're near the end, it's like, you look back and you think, my God, if I had another 50 years of life, I would not worry about any of the things I worried about when I was your age, when I was 20, 30. You think they're problems, they're not problems. Until you realize your days are numbered. He's like, you don't realize what you just, he said that, and I was like, Christ, it does put things into perspective for you. And I managed to put a lot into perspective then, but I kind of sadly learned a lot of these things when I finished playing, not when I had it. I didn't have this perspective when I finished. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I do stand by that 80-20. But like I say, I don't have it up, weirdly. You work so hard for it, and it's under my bed somewhere. But I know I've got, 5 starting Test Lions jerseys, and that like means the world to me, and it makes the sort of 10, 15 years of sacrifice and dedication completely worth it. So I say I didn't enjoy a lot of it. I didn't, but was it worth it? Absolutely. So yeah,
it does make a lot of sense. I mean, you could sum up a lot of what you said in one word, which is perspective, which is a sort of terrible cliche anyway, but it's a great lesson for children as well. We all get in our bubbles at all different times in our lives and believe that what we're involved with is the most important thing. And then you come out the other side and you realize there's a hell of a lot going on outside, and it doesn't matter so much.
Do you know what makes you realize that? We've all got kids. When your wife goes into labor, you drop everything, excuse my language, like a sack of shit. And for 24 hours, you couldn't give a monkeys about what's going on in the world apart from your wife and that baby. And that gives you, so when people have kids and they carry on playing, you don't understand it when you don't have kids. But when people have kids and they have a new perspective when they play, you understand when you have kids, because suddenly nothing in life is important. Things that are normally important to you, when your wife goes into labor, nothing matters. And I've just sort of gone through that 3 times now. But these are all things that you learn as you get older. And I sometimes think, I did play into my mid-30s. I would have been a probably very different captain in character compared to the intense 20-year-old that I was before I had family and stuff. So I guess, yeah, you kind of learn a lot of these things. Biggs has got the lovely thing that you played for so long. You probably see yourself as a very different person now playing compared to when you were 21. Like, people see the same Dan Biggar, but the way you prepare and your perspective on the game and life and pressure is probably so different to when you played. But I learned these things all in retirement because I finished quite young.
Dan, does the 80-20 resonate with you, or how would you pitch your sort of pleasure-pain ratio?
Yeah, well, I'd agree with Sam. When you lose for Wales on a Saturday in the Six Nations, especially when you play number 10 for Wales, there's not a huge amount of pleasure going on your weekend off the back of that. So I'd say it would probably be 99-1 at that stage. But I have to say, I don't know, maybe myself and Sam are slightly different in that sense. I used to relish the bad moments. I used to really enjoy people slagging you off, people writing you off, people putting you under pressure. I used to really enjoy those moments. And I think
that's why you're still playing at 35 and I at 28. I blamed injury. It wasn't, it was the easiest way to get out. And yeah, maybe my body wasn't right, but I'll be honest, this sounds really bad saying this. I obviously didn't love the game like you loved it, or I would have carried on. I think boys who play into their 35, I look at them and go, wow, fair play. They must really love the game, because I think what I loved was I loved trying to achieve. And once I achieved a certain level, it was weird, the flame went. So that's why I look at people like Biggs, Alan Wynne, who played for so long, and I'm like, they'll disagree with the 80-20 because they obviously see the game differently to me. I saw it as a way to achieve, but Biggs and Al must just love the game more than me, because that's why you're still playing.
But did you feel at 28, Wobbs, did you feel like there was not a huge amount to give? Or did you
mentally there was nothing left to give? I was just, for me, I kind of talk about a story about when I was like 14, and it was quite an intense period, especially having the captaincy young as well for like 6 years. Like, I think I just thought, I'm done. Mentally, just completely clocked out. I just thought I'd never use mental health. I've had mental health in the family, and I've seen like extreme mental health. So I never like to use mental health. But I think, well, it's a continuum, isn't it, mental health? And I probably look back at when I finished, I was probably somewhere, like, I was still miles away from where people close to me were, but I probably had shifted up along that continuum to, I'm not coping with this very well, and I'm sick and tired of it. So I'm gonna get out. And I probably struggled with that. I probably struggled. I think a lot of that was put on myself because I was such an intense. A lot of people would have known it, but I put so much pressure on myself to be good from a young age. So much pressure. Um, the short story would be like my dad bought me a Lions shirt because I put on this questionnaire. I wanted to be a British and Irish Lions legend when I was 14, and I give it back to my dad. It's for a mate in work. So he bought me this number 7 Lions shirt for Christmas. I wore it everywhere. But I remember a few months later, I put it back. I put it away in my wardrobe. He said to me a few weeks gone by, he's like, "Where's that Lions shirt gone? Because you wore it everywhere." So I wrote down on this questionnaire, it was like name, age, sport, position, ambition. So I just wrote down name, Sam Warburton, age 14, sport, rugby union, position, open side flanker, and ambition. I'm not saying I achieved it, just saying the story as it is. I just wrote down British and Irish Lions rugby legend. So that's why he got me the shirt. And he was like, "That's a bit arrogant. You can't write that." And I was like, "Yeah, but that's what I want to do though, Dad. I want to be like one of the best ever Lions players ever. Like, that's what I want to do." And so I did put this shirt away that he bought me after a few months. And he said, "Where's it gone? You've lost it." I said, No. I said, and I was probably maybe 15 at this point. I said, "No, I'm not going to wear another Lions shirt ever again until I put on the real thing." I used to be like the teenager with all the Lions merch when it came out. I never wore a Lions bit of kit ever again from that moment. So I thought the only bit of kit I ever put on now, I'm fed up of being this pretender, would be a real Lions 7 shirt. So yeah, when I'm 24, that's where the greatest moment of my career was getting my first test shirt from Suri McGeechan. Because that was to me, I was 24 then. So that was 10 years of resilience and sacrifice and hard work. That continued again for another 4 years to the next tour. So after 14 years of this kind of mental kind of strain I was putting on myself, I just thought, oh, I'm done. I'm done. Once I achieved it. So I think that's why I finished that 17 tour. I came home and I thought, I haven't got anything else to prove to myself. I've done what I've wanted to do. And that's probably why I finished. Yeah, my body was struggling. I did have a neck op. I did have a knee op. But a little part of me thought as well, I played against some great players in their mid-30s. I played against them, got the better of them. I remember thinking, God, they're not as good as I thought they were. And I remember that. And they obviously were great players in their prime, but I obviously missed them in their prime. But I remember thinking, God, I never want a young player to play against me and think that. Oh, I thought Sam was pretty dynamic. He was quite weak, actually. I never wanted that. And I never liked it. I see, pro boxers going back into retirement, back into competing out of retirement. I thought, nah, finish when you finished at a high level and don't come back. So people don't remember you as a third choice or holding pads. I always wanted to bow out when I was doing well. So, that's kind of probably explains a little bit more why I finished quite prematurely. Yeah, the body was struggling, but I didn't even want to take any chances to see if I could get back because I didn't want anyone to see me not at full tilt, So that was why I finished at 28.
Well, obviously, you not only wore that 7 shirt for the Lions 5 times, you captains the Lions twice, one of only 2 men to do it along with Martin Johnson. First of all, how different was the second time? But also how daunting was it going into not just you mentioned how daunting it was as a young guy going into a Wales setup. How daunting was it going into a Lions setup as captain as a young guy?
Good one. Yeah. So the first tour when I was 24, when you get that phone call, do you want to be Lions captain? Oh my God. You just never think you're going to hear that. I always wanted to play 7 for the Lions. I never aspired to be captain, which is probably why I found it easy to delegate because I was like, I don't want to be captain anyway. I just want to be one of the boys, But when you hear that being read out, do you want to be Lions captain? No, I still haven't found a way to explain it, but I was very anxious about doing that tour. Guys like Brian O'Driscoll, Paul O'Connell on that tour, people I was admiring when I was mid-teens, young teens, I'm their captain. I thought I'm not worthy of this. It was my first ever tour, so everything was brand new from day one. Every day was like a new day. But then when you go on those tours, Brian and Paul, who I thought were going to be really imposing figures, were so nice, approachable, helpful. I thought, oh my God, I thought they were going to be these ruthless, hard to speak to kind of guys, but it's not like that. It's so supportive. And I've really learned a lot about leadership around those guys because nothing was too much trouble for them to help me out. And they went out their way to help me. So, oh my God, this is awesome. So captain the Lions is the highest pressure, but it's actually the easiest team to lead
Mm.
because you've got about 10 guys in that team who could be captain. So you actually got to let them all lead. You got to let them all do their thing. So I was panicking on the first tour, but the second tour, so I was 28 at this point. I remember driving around with my wife, and I learned this from the first one. The captain obviously gets asked a week or two before. Everyone else does find out genuinely live, don't they, Biggs, on Sky?
Yeah.
But captain does know before because you have to be at the press conference. So I knew if I was going to be captain, I'd get a call. Now, I played really, the last 6 stations I played before this tour was, I was, without sounding arrogant, was one of my better 6 stations I played in. So I thought, you know, I've got to be red hot to go on tour. Thought I won every individual battle that campaign. So I was driving around, and everyone asks you about 30 times a day you're going to be Lions captain. Now you think 30 times, what? I'm like, no, like I walk the dog, 5 people walking the dog will say you Lions captain. Go into Cardiff training, every member of the squad will ask if I'm Lions captain. On the WhatsApp groups, half my family will ask me, have you had the captaincy call? It's insane. Like if you're in contention to have it. So I remember then I was like driving around with my wife in the car, and we were passing like a little local grocery store, and we needed some bread and milk. I said, to my wife, Rach, you got to go and get the milk. I said, the person who works at the till loves rugby, and I just cannot fathom the idea of another. I haven't got the energy to answer another question. You're going to be Lions captain, because I obviously didn't know it at this point, and I didn't think it was going to be me. So she went in to get the milk. About a minute later, my phone starts vibrating, so I looked down and it just said Gats, which is Warren Gatland, who was head coach. I thought, Jesus Christ! Like, I knew I played well, and I just picked up a knock against Ulster. So I thought, Christ, they're either ringing to say I'm going to be captain, or they're ringing out of courtesy, which they never normally do. But I know they might have done it to 1 or 2 players. I know it happened to Wilkinson in 2013. They asked him because he was at Toulon. Or he's either ringing to say, look, Sam, just letting you know out of respect, you were in contention, but now you're injured. Just want to let you know we're not going to take you on tour. So I knew it was going to be an all or nothing phone call. So I answered it on my own and a little bit of pleasantries. And he just said, I could, there was a pause. I thought, here we go. He just said, do you want to be Lions captain for New Zealand? So like, obviously I just, you can imagine from toes all the way up to your hair, you're still up with this excitement and just overwhelming sort of just happiness. I remember my answer was just, because I'm very different then as in my belief as a captain and what my role. I wanted it then. I didn't think I was going to, but I wanted it. I was like, ring me, because I believe I'm the guy who can lead us to beat New Zealand. And New Zealand were back-to-back world champs then. So he said, do you want to be Lions captain? I remember I just said, damn right, I'll be captain and we'll beat them. I was just so dead certain we would. And he just went, great, I'll see you next week at the press conference. And that was pretty much it. So I was a completely different character within 4 years. First time, didn't want it at all. Second time, done a Lions tour, done 2 World Cups as captain, all been relatively successful. And yeah, I felt I was ready to take on 17, which is why I sort of sound still bugged. I still wish we won that tour, but I was a very different character going into that tour.
Just out of interest, you referenced how supportive Brian O'Driscoll and Paul O'Connell were in 2013. Bring that to life a bit. Give some examples of what that meant on the tour, how those senior pros were helping you on a day-to-day basis. What were they adding?
Yeah, Dan's seen enough forward sessions on a Tuesday morning. They get pretty heated. So I remember our first Tuesday session, we were still on British shores because we were training in the Vale where Wales trained for a week. Then you train where Ireland trained for a week. They were the 2 tours I went on. We were training on a Tuesday, one of the first days training that we all had together. And forwards had a big contact this morning. Driving line outs, scrums. They get pretty heated, those sessions, as you can imagine. You got 30 alphas just running around. Not that many, 20 alphas running around. But we finished the session, and I don't really speak on I don't feel the need to be emotional on a Tuesday. I like it if other people do, but I don't need to get there on a Tuesday. I get there more Friday, Saturday. But we finished this session, and the coach spoke. I thought he spoke really well. I'm like, I don't need to say anything here. And then Paul O'Connell just chipped in at the end, and he just sort of stated what kind of pack we were going to be, how ruthless, how aggressive, how physical, the standards. It was brilliant. Like, he spoke brilliantly, and it's what you would expect someone like Paul O'Connell to say. I thought that was perfect. So I didn't say anything. Walked off. I just walked off the pitch just to get my boots off, and get some shakes in, whatever you do. And he come trotting up behind me, and he just tapped me on the shoulder. He went, "Oh, Sam, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Why?" He said, "Oh, I came in at the end there. It's just normally what I do with Ireland. I just sort of get quite pumped on these sort of contact days, and I kind of drive it at the start of the week, you know. I said, mate, that's perfect. I said, that's kind of like how me and Alan Wynne kind of operate. Alan Wynne like kind of just drives things in the week, and I kind of just swoop in at the end. And Paulie went, oh, that's like me and Bod. Brian, like I kind of talk at the start of the week, and Brian just kind of swoops in on Friday, Saturdays. You know, he's quite chilled at the start of the week. I said, mate, you keep doing that because we need it. That's perfect, you know? And like, that's just like a small example where I was just like, he felt he had to come up to me 10 years younger and apologize. I was like, no, that's like, I need that because I find that inspiring. And, you know, if I find that inspiring, so will the rest of the group. So that's like a small anecdote of how those guys are helpful. Then we know the boundaries. He knows I need him. Before games, then like I'll go up to each of those lads because, you know, Biggs, if you're on your first lines tour, you'd love to hear Brian speak to you for 10 seconds pre-match, or Paul, or these guys. So I just go around the dressing room, and you might recall, Biggs, I did to you. Like, I'll just go around the dressing room after a warm up, and I just go, if it's say Paul or Brian, or say Biggs this time, I go, Biggs, do you want anything pre-match? And sometimes you go, no. Sometimes you go, actually, yeah, I wouldn't mind 20 seconds. I go to the other, like maybe 3 or 4 other people. I go, do you want anything pre-match? If the first 2 have said, yeah, I don't ask anyone else because there's too much. But you just give people that opportunity to be like, you know what? Yeah, actually, I've got a message. I've got a really important message. I go, great, I'll come to you just before we go out. So it's just giving people that room and that space. But that's probably a small anecdote of how I found someone like Paul would have been very helpful.
I was curious as a quick follow-up when you talked about those early contact sessions, particularly on Lions tours, and these like 20 alpha sounds like quite sort of feral. But whether it takes like a few days and a few sessions to break down the rivalries, and whether, I mean, I'm sure the intensity remains. Maybe is it a different kind of intensity because people are still kind of undoing the kind of the neural pathways of remembering who's who in the zoo.
Do you know what? It's weird. And I know Dan will say the same thing. It's so easy just to get on board and put the rivalries to one side. It's not even a thing. You just track on, don't you, Biggs?
It's do you know what I always, when people ask me this sort of question, it's a concept that shouldn't work, should it? The Lions is a concept that shouldn't work, and it's really difficult to like explain it, but it just does. And I can't really say why or how or what happens, but it just does. It almost like, I don't know what you think, Wolves, but you know when you walk through the door the first day of the hotel, it's like you're not picking average club players or even average good international players. You're picking the absolute top of the top, and not just as rugby players, but as like personalities, characters who want to win, want to become Lions, Test series winners, etc. And it's almost like all that baggage, all those egos, just get parked at the front door, don't they?
It's weird. Like, it's so easy. I can only imagine, like, you know, if you had all the best sort of like legal firms in London, and you put all their top people together in a room and say, we need to get this job done, you'll just go into lawyer mode and go, boom, right, let's get it done. Like, it's just your job. You're professionals. You just put all that stuff to one side. But say, like, I say this back to fans, and fans ask, I go, well, when you go to the Lions Village and there's 8,000 of you crammed in a massive tent, and you were the English, the Scots, the Irish, and the Welsh, they're like, do you have a good time? And they go, oh my God, it's amazing. It's the best. I go, same with players. We just jump on the same bandwagon that you get on, and we're all on this Lions bandwagon. So, yeah, it's weirdly, it doesn't take a few days to get to speed. It's you're all pro players, you know rugby, you get on the training pitch, and you just crack on with being the best professional rugby player that you can. And you just train. That's what you do. That's the job. You know, it's what you're used to day in, day out. It's just, and you don't really realize it. Suddenly come to watch a Lions session, and members chatting, you know, it's like, Biggs, you have these Lions sessions, and sometimes they'll open up a session to the official supporters group, come and watch you train or something. And you chat to some of them afterwards, and they go, my God, you train fast. And you're like, really? Like, you train for 50 minutes, but like there's never more than the 30-second break. And you're just banging out drills left, right, and center, 100 miles an hour. But that's just what you're used to. Because you're so used to it, you just step in and you go. That's just like you kind of like, that's your comfort zone. Like, it's what you're used to, you know. Well, I guess from the outside it looks really alien, but it's actually weirdly the easiest thing to do to get everybody on board. And as Biggs mentioned it, and it's so true. You'd be dull to think they don't character reference any player that goes into the Lions tour. You've got to be a good player, but you have to be a good person. Because as you said, everybody's used to being number one, but how are they going to be if they're number three? Are they still going to be a good teammate? And they'll speak to club coaches, international coaches, and might explain why some players haven't been on tour. But you've got to be a good player, of course, but you've got to be a good person with it. And I think that's what makes the Lions tour so easy.
Worbs, is there one bit of advice that you'd be giving to Maro for the next couple of months in terms of from your experience of being Lions captain in 13 and 17?
Yeah. Uh, you need as many of those leaders around you as possible. Let the other leaders lead. I'm sure you can think of an example, Biggs, of a coach or a captain. And somebody once said this quote to me, and it's so true. He said, "Weak leaders love weak people around them," meaning yes men. Just get a bunch of yes men around you. And actually, the strong leaders actually get really challenging, good people around them. If I just suppressed you, Biggs, or suppressed Dan Wynn and never let anyone, that is really weak leadership. You have to let those big personalities lead because the whole group will benefit. It can't be a one voice thing. So I would just be like, yeah, you obviously you have to prioritize performance. That's a given. But anyone in there who strikes you as a good leader, let them lead and encourage them to lead because the group needs as much of that as possible. Because it's a tough tour. It's bloody tough. Like in 17, you'll remember Dan, like, and it wasn't until the week of the last
It
10.
was like, yeah, it was like 5 weeks in, wasn't it?
Yeah. We didn't, well, we actually had a day where we could wake up in our bed and go back to bed in the same bed without a day's training or any commitment or travel or playing. It was relentless. So yeah, let others lead. It's not a one man job, captaincy and leadership. It's about getting the right leadership group around you. And Mara will know, he'll know to do that.
What just go thinking about, the conclusion of your playing career. Firstly, what was your primary emotion when you came away? Was it a sense of grief? Was it relief? Was it pain? And then what did you underestimate about life after playing rugby? And
Do
perhaps
you
you
mean
hadn't
that? Do you
anticipated.
mean that when you say the last? Do you mean that penalty decision specifically, or just when I finished
No,
playing?
when you finished, just when your playing career came to an end, what were the overriding emotions? Despite you probably been spending months thinking about it and planning it, then the reality hit you. Uh, what were the overriding emotions?
Yeah, I think it's quite common. It was relief. Um, when you win things, it's often relief. It's just the weight of pressure and burden off your shoulders. And it's only like afterwards you can actually like really enjoy that. You look back on the process and kind of enjoy parts of it. But it was just relief. I tell you, because of the last when I left the game, it was probably freedom. I think what people don't realize when you're a pro athlete is you get given a schedule every 2 weeks, telling you where to be, what to do, what to wear, at what time. Every 2 weeks, you get this schedule that you're bound to. So when your wife says, "Should we go away for Christmas or should we go away this half term?" You go, "Don't know. No, we can't." Your partner has to wait until you get those sacred 4 weeks off at the end of the year. And guess what? If you're injured, you're coming in to train because you're injured. And they might give you 1 or 2 weeks where you can get away completely. It's a very restrictive life. It's good. It's a good life. It's a good life. Don't get me wrong. I'm not feeding poverty. It's a very restrictive life. And the novelty now of my wife saying to me, "Should we go away?" And it'll be like 4 months down the line. "Should we go away with the kids for 5 days in November?" The novelty of being able to go, "Yeah, go on then." Like it's the freedom is amazing. So yeah, probably relief and the sense of freedom that you get. Like I said, I don't want to talk ill of being a pro sportsman. If I could go back to being 14, I'd do it all over again. And I'd urge any 14-year-old who wants to reach the top to do it because what it gives you is amazing. It truly is. Just accept you're going to have to be pretty resilient along the way. Very resilient because that's probably the one common denominator I noticed in a Lions dressing room. You're in a Lions dressing room, right? Sometimes, and I'm sure you did this, Biggs, when you got those quiet moments, you just look around sometimes the dressing room, just look around from the forwards pack, around the backs, around the bench. You look at some of the players. I was on the bench for one game, and on the bench was Lee Halfpenny, Maritoji, Johnny Sexton, Carl Sinclair, and Roy Best. You're in that dressing room. People go, "You nervous at that point?" At that point, you're like, "How the hell can we lose?" Okay, but you look at all the traits of those people, and you go, "My God, they're resilient people to get to where they are." So once all that's over, it's probably just an enormous release of um, pressure. Like I say, it's relief, and the sense of freedom that you get when you finish playing is still now 7, 8 years later, I still haven't got used to it. And I still love that luxury of just that little bit of freedom, because we've been like this. Me and Dan were in academy since we were 15 years old. So we've lived this life since we were 15, So that sense of freedom is amazing too.
I, I can relate so much to that, War, because Alex, my wife, obviously finishing at the end of the year, well, in a few weeks, basically. And she asked me a few weeks ago, she said, "Oh, can we take the kids to Disneyland for Halloween?" And I was like, well, I've never been able to ever say yes to something that far in advance. Like we're
Crazy.
planning holidays for like next year's after the Six Nations, like skiing trips,
Oh, mate, it's
etc. Like
amazing. And it won't get old, mate. It won't,
yeah,
even if it's 20 years, it won't get old.
and that's something that like I'm really excited about. I'm not sort of sad about finishing because I've got all that to look forward to. But another thing that you mentioned there was that relief, and I think that's something that people don't realize. When you are a professional sportsman, whatever sport you do, I don't know. I know that you were probably you're desperate to be successful. And I know it sounds stupid, but like for me, I always thought I'd like to go into the media afterwards and do some bits and pieces. And I always wanted, when they put your name up when you first come on screen, and it's like, Sam Warburton, Dan Biggar. I always wanted my name to be like Six Nations winner, 2013, 19, 21. You know what I mean? I always wanted that. And I felt like once you've achieved that, it's there's a bit of pressure off and there's a bit of relief when you're successful, because you put out so much on yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
And you set yourself goals and bits and pieces. And I felt like for me, that was like a big moment, and relief's probably the overriding emotion.
And do you know what? Like, even little things which like people forget, like, like there was about a 5, 6 year period where I knew at any single morning of my life at 6 o'clock in the morning a drugs tester can turn up, which they did on plenty of occasions. And then I was on a train home from London, and I was a little bit not paranoid. I would talk about nutrition. Like, I had to hit my protein goal every single day. I knew I had to hit 200 grams of protein every day. So I'd be like coming home from London when I retired, and I was like, oh, damn it, I'm a bit low on protein today. I need to buy some protein. Picked up this protein bottle. I was like, I can't have that. It's not informed sport tested. And I remember thinking, I'm retired. I can drink whatever the hell I want. Like, it was weird. And even my wife, like, there was a time I walked into my kitchen, and I did do this. I wrote down like players I was competing with, because there's loads of chocolate in my house. My wife loves it. So I open up this drawer and I put these players' names down inside this drawer. And then I close it like, fuck no, I ain't having that. So then I open this drawer, the players' names are gone, but I was like, oh yeah, I'll have some chocolate. And I'm retired now. And I didn't know my wife was behind me, and I was like, oh no, I can't have it. And I closed the door, and she was like, Sam, you're retired. You can have a bar of chocolate, But so that's why when I say like I was quite intense, people probably didn't see it, but away from like the cameras, I put a lot on myself to be as good as I possibly could. So that, yeah, being able to have all that freedom back is it feels quite strange when you've lived a pretty restrictive lifestyle for a long time.
The chocolate drawer is yours. Wow. There you go. Mars bars, whispers, crunchies. It's all open to you, Dan Biggar.
I honestly, I'm a savage for chocolate as well. The only thing I can't disclose, I won't be able to disclose who are the players' names, but you could probably have a guess who they were anyway.
Yeah. We haven't heard that story from you, or maybe other players have done that, where you open the chocolate drawer and you discipline yourself by putting like your rivals or your kind of those you admire in front of you.
I know no one's going to give a shit, really. Like, no one else probably cared about that stuff like me. I remember you remember Luke Charteris, Biggs. He came into my hotel room once. He'd tell you this story. We were playing a test match on a Saturday. It's like a Thursday. Comes in, he cracks open one of the complimentary biscuits that's by the kettle in the hotel room. He went to put it in his mouth, and I went, whoa, 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 what are you doing? He was like mid-mouthful, like, oh, what do you mean? I said, you're going to eat that 2 days from a test match? And he was like, yeah. I was like, man, I couldn't do that. You're mad. And I was like, that's kind of how I was, like, I don't know. When
Real rock and roll, Wobbs.
I know, yeah. That's kind of, and like, don't get me wrong, a biscuit isn't going to affect your performance, but I just needed to know if I did absolutely everything in the week, I would take that field knowing I'm a better athlete than this guy.
Yeah.
I've played better than this guy. I'm mentally tougher than this guy. You can't be better than me. But they were just like the weird tick boxes that I had to tick just to make sure I could feel I was going into a game bulletproof.
Right. On that note, should we do a few quick fire questions to round it off?
Cool. Let's go for it.
I was sort of tempted to say, since we were talking about chocolate, like, what would you've got a desert island chocolate. You can have it as a brand or a bar. Dan, you can answer this one as well.
Mine would be fruit and nut and always chilled in the fridge.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like all
that's
chocolate,
good.
whatever it is, very cold. I like
Gotta
that.
have a snap. Gotta have a snap.
Yeah, detail. I like that. It's important.
Mine's a little bit more out there. I would go. I think mine would be a twirl.
Oh yes, good shout. That's a good
Twirl would be
shout.
mine, I
Yeah.
think. What about Dan? What would yours be?
I'm going for a brand called HU. Have you come across it? It's
Oh,
vegan. It's a bit pricey, but it's amazing. You can get like cashew nut filled, almond filled, and I like dark chocolate generally more than milk. So check it out. You get it in most, if not in the, you get it in
I'm not.
Sainsbury's.
I'm not sure. You haven't done a great job selling that, Dan. I
No,
gotta
it's
be
you
honest.
delicious.
lost me a vegan.
Yeah.
Vegan bit. It's absolutely delicious, and because it's vegan, well, it's full of other bad stuff. You somehow like irrationally think this is quasi healthy, so I better have another piece. HU, it's very good.
There it is.
Okay,
We'll leave the chocolate to the side. Wobbs, who's your most underrated teammate that you
Oh,
played with?
easy one. I'll just go quick fire. I won't explain why, but I go Josh Navidi, hell of a player, and wasn't rated until the end of his career. But he was a brilliant seven who probably did go on a Lions tour, but doesn't get the accolades that he probably deserves. He was a hell of a player who probably, like I said, was probably underappreciated by a few until later on in his career. How about you?
okay.
Who would have been the most underrated player I played? And I see I'm the one asking the questions now, Wobbs, so I don't have to think of too many answers now. You've put me on the spot. Do you know what? Who's the most underrated player I played with? Do you know what? I think Jamie George in 20 when we played in 17 and 21 was, even though Jamie is he's well renowned and things, but just how good he is at in terms of his nuts and bolts of his game. I was really impressed with Jamie actually, and a brilliant bloke to go with it as well, and someone who doesn't grab headlines, but yeah, really good teammate.
I agree.
Good shout. Okay, my one. What animal were you on the pitch?
Do you know what? It's a little bit cheesy, not because I played for the Lions, but I always loved the lion. And a quick little one. Remember when I was going through a little bit of a rough time, and I remember my agent texted me a picture when I was like worrying about something. He texted me a picture of a lion, and the quote just said, and it's regarding people giving you criticism, and it was this lion standing on this rock, and it just said, "Lions don't worry about the opinions of sheep." And I don't mean that to sound patronizing, but I remember thinking that's so freaking true. So I always wanted to be that sort of lion where it's like just calm, composed, unflappable, but yeah, deep down that nothing was going to stop you. So I quite like that one.
But there is an adapted quotation in certain fields where you'd say, in your case, that it's the players make history and the journalists write about history, or something of that order. You know.
The problem is now we're on the other side, Daniel. Me and Wobbs now. So
I wanted a sheep now.
You can make it and write it as well.
Wobbs, I was going to ask this one, but I'm not, because I know the answer. I was going to be win ugly or lose beautifully, and I know that's a wasted question on you. So I'm going to go for a bit more of a fun one. What's karaoke song? What's your go-to?
Do you know what? I never did it on my 50th cap because we lost, and it wasn't right. We lost to England, but it was going to be Michael Jackson, "The Way You Make Me Feel." So yeah, I quite like Michael Jackson. It's got a good beat, that one. So that would probably be my my karaoke song. I tell you what I did do as well. I was at a dinner and I did say there's two options. The loudest cheer will get this option. So I said Michael Jackson, "The Way You Make Me Feel," or the other song I know is Tenacious D, the rude one.
Oh yeah.
Something Heard Gently. And that got an enormous cheer. So I went, all right, turn your cameras off. And I belted that out karaoke in front of the whole audience. So that would be another one as well.
Should we do one more each? We'll do one more each. Okay. A book every leader should read.
Oh, that's a good one. Do you know what? It's a little bit deep, this.
Has Andy McCann got any books out, Wob?
He's got a book called Stroke Survivor. He got one called Stroke Survivor, actually. He survived a stroke. No, do you know what it is? I've got this I'm not spiritual at all, right? But I got this like stoicism. I've got this book, and it does gives you a daily stoic kind of quote. And I remember when I was in my career playing, somebody said to me after an interview, and went, "You're quite stoic, aren't you?" I went, "What does that mean?" A lot of it's about like perspective and But yeah, I read this book, and it gives you like a stoic kind of quote and sort of learning. I don't read it every day. I might just read 5 on one night and then I leave it for a week and read another 5. But I read that, it just gives me great perspective on life. I just think, yeah, I found that very handy. I can find the exact name for you and send it. But yeah,
Okay.
it's a Stoicism book. Yeah, I love it.
Brilliant. Go on, Dan.
I'm finished up. We ask everyone this question, Warbs. I'm not quite sure where you're going to go with it or what you're going to choose. But if you could go to any sporting event in the world that you
Mm.
haven't been to, what would it be? So Wimbledon, Super Bowl, etc. What would it be?
That I haven't been to.
Yeah,
Okay. I've done Wimbledon, loved that. Good question. I think what would be awesome would be like last. I've never done it. Not a massive golfer, but to be on the last day of the Ryder Cup or a Masters, to be on the 18th, like that would be epic because they're always amazing scenes. Never done it. Never been to a professional golf event. But yeah, I've always watched that. It always just captures the imagination, doesn't it?
the Masters has been a popular one with quite a few of the guests. Yeah, so
Could you imagine what it's like to get seats on the 18th for the Masters? I don't know who gets those, actually. I've never met anyone who's had one.
But
You get
so Mark Darban, the ex CEO of Saints, is now the CEO of the R&A up in St Andrews, and he was when Rory was getting presented with his jacket, he was 3 rows back when
amazing.
he was getting presented. He said it was the most unbelievable experience.
Well, that shows the ilk of people or kind of person you've got to be to get a.
Yeah, me and you will be struggling, I'd say. Well,
Yeah, us sort of mere mortals aren't getting those ones, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Well, listen, on that note, Sam Warburton, thank you very, very much.
Pleasure, guys. Great to chat to you. Enjoyed that one.
really appreciate it, Wobbs.
But Dan, I have to say, despite a few little technical glitches behind the scenes along the way, we got there in the end. And I suppose because of the relationship, and if Warburton is someone you know so well, it always, when that happens, I think creates a really relaxed and fun atmosphere. But apart from that, more seriously, like I loved all the bits about the lines in particular, especially for me, like getting that inside track about what it really means to not only to be on those tours, but to captain 2 tours and the influence of all the greats like a Connell and a Driscoll. That kind of inside track behind the kimono for me was just so fascinating. Loved it.
Yeah, he's a. I mean, like I think we both knew before. Well, I certainly knew that beforehand. You guess that he's a intelligent, articulate guy, isn't he? Who I actually thought like what he was really good at was he was quite happy to open what he wasn't good at and openly tell us what he wasn't particularly good at. And I think that again, I love this. I loved his quote: "The weak leaders like weak people," and I think I've been involved in with a few of them, I can assure you. And it's so true. And I think it's so easy to try and do everything yourself and not take advice on board and not give other people a chance to speak. And I don't think that could be any truer in life, sport, business, whatever it is. It was really good. So no, he was, as you'd expect, he was polished and yeah, maybe a tad obsessive about the chocolate bars in the drawer, but we'll let him off for that.
Well, that poor guy. I've never heard of it. Was he one of your teammates just casually having a kettle biscuit in a hotel and mid bite being chastised by the team captain? What are you doing?
Yeah, Luke Charteris he'd have been all right. He wouldn't have lost too much sleep over that.
You would have got
I
over it.
wouldn't have thought. Yeah, no, he'd have been all right. But just yeah, like I said, I think as well. Like nobody's going to lose a game of rugby because they had a biscuit or a Mars bar on Friday afternoon. But I think it was just that's like his mindset, wasn't it? That he
Yeah,
wanted to do everything that he could be in the right frame of mind. And I think those 4 Ps were really good at the start as well.
brilliant.
In
Yeah,
terms of, I think
brilliant
that's
framework.
something that could resonate to a lot of people: professionalism, positive people, and performance. I think that could well be the start of something. There's a brilliant sort of analogy.
Yeah, and finally, the point that you made that you just picked up on the quote about leadership, about weak leaders hire or bring in we take on weak players. I mean, the business analogy is very similar. You talk about A leaders hire A operators, B leaders hire C operators. Basically, you kind of ideally you want people who are better than you in your team and your organization because you want to raise the standards. You want to keep challenging yourself. Um,
Yeah, and it says more about just says more about you as an individual, doesn't it? Says exactly, tells
Absolutely.
you everything that you want to know about them as a leader or an individual. So, no, he's brilliant. Love that, and especially given that the Lions is coming up
Nice
in the
timing.
not so distant future, it was great timing.
Absolutely. So, what do we want to say to our listeners before we depart?
We want everyone to like, subscribe, follow, all those bits and pieces wherever you get your pods,
Yeah.
YouTube, etc. Keep giving us some love because we love doing it.
Absolutely, 100%. All right. Till next time. Cheers, Dan.
Cheers, Dan.